And so the UNHCR, really, what are they supposed to do? They sold $135 million worth of their assets to try to close this 63% gap. That's not going to get it done. They cut their staff in half.
Well, this was massive.
Holy shit.
Massive around the world.
They cut it in half globally.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No, who's doing the work?
What's going to happen as a result of that cut? Like, how many people are going to die? I mean, can we create some sort of a tally about how many people have died as a result of these types of decisions?
Welcome back to Humanitarian Watch, a shorter version of our main podcast called Fractured. We are connecting to you today to bring you some data, very hardcore data registered by UNHCR. And UNHCR usually publishes those data just before the World Refugee Day, which was on June 20th. We, however, that week decided to bring you something else. We wanted to bring you how displacement really looks like in every crisis situation. So we brought Jordan Siegel, and she told us about the situation in Sudan, which is actually the worst humanitarian situation in the world, seriously. So we decided that this will be something to give you an overlook of the situation there. Now, we would like to, however, go deeper into the UNHCR data because there are some interesting data, and I am really wondering if you're gonna take it the same way, if you're gonna interpret it the same way as I do, because this report generally, it's not a very positive report, not from UNHCR side, but there are many entities who celebrate the fact that for the first time in a decade, the number of refugees dropped. Actually, it's more than a decade, but the drop is tiny. So last year, 2024, because we're talking about data from 2025. It's always the global report from the previous year is published in June.
Should I do a drum roll about the number?
You can.
For pretend.
So the drop from 129.9 million in 2024 to 129.4 in 2025. So something like 500,000 people. That's the drop. Yeah.
Well, it's better that it's going down, but I know that numbers can be very misleading. So how did the numbers go down?
So I wanna just say one thing. When I first came to work in the field back in 2016, I remember specifically that it was around 63,000. So it doubled in this
10
decade,
years,
right? It's huge. So we saw this increase. It was like a little like stable flat, and then war in Ukraine, bam, going up, right? So this data, the decrease is predominantly related to some significant drops, predominantly in returns. So just to quote and be very precise, the number of refugees dropped by 8%. The number of asylum seekers, however, rose by 8%. The number of internally displaced people dropped by 6%. And it's important to say that this data of UNHCR, this is data general on displacement. So this is global displacement plus stateless people. When it comes to stateless people, there's a growth, but a small one. But this is a thing very, very hard to really measure. And now we're coming to the interesting part. Refugee returns. Did you pay attention to this? By how much the returns went up?
Yeah, it's a giant number.
It's a giant number. It's like 170%.
Yeah, but isn't the total number like something crazy?
Yes.
Millions?
So it is, obviously it is. But, there were like 1.6 million refugees returning in 2024. Now it's 4.4.
Yeah, 4.4 million. That's
yes,
the number I remember.
Exactly. Yeah. So it is very big. And also the people who are internally displaced, this number went up when it comes to people who returned, and it is by 25%. So it is
but
a
that
significant
was like
number.
10 million people, I think,
Yeah.
that were
Yeah.
internally displaced, went back to the places they were in
Yeah.
originally in their country. But in both cases, they're going back to like completely war-torn, destroyed spaces.
It is. Like when it comes to internally displaced people and those returns, I want to make a comment because those are multiple displacements. It is a displacement of somebody who is affected by war, by some tragic events, also by persecution. But then sometimes when those conditions are not that terrible anymore, the violence goes down, for example, people return. And then they are displaced again because it's back and forth in some countries, right?
We're seeing this in the current like war scenes in Lebanon. People in southern Lebanon, they flee. Then there's a mini pseudo ceasefire or a ceasefire that isn't really one. But then you see all the people coming back, and they're even crossing roads that have no roads. The bridges are knocked out, and they're finding their way to still cross anyway to go back to their homes. And then boom, the violence comes back. They have to flee again. So, and then the same in Sudan. Jordan was talking about how many people are in South Sudan, but they're going to go back to Sudan, which is still deeply involved in the civil war, but they're going to do it because they have maybe a sliver of a chance of the space that they had previously lived in is like slightly peaceful now compared. But at any moment, it could just trigger another moment of run for your life again. It's really unbelievable.
So since you mentioned Sudan, let's just very briefly say which conflicts in the world drive the number of refugees, keep it pretty high. So Sudan obviously is one of the top countries. Then we have Democratic Republic of the Congo, but we also have South Sudan, and it's a little bit back and forth. We have the conflict in Mali. We discussed it with Monika Pronchuk through a few episodes ago, and we'll definitely put a link to this episode in the show notes because it's very interesting and it explains a very complicated topic.
Yeah, the whole Sahel is really on fire now, but in Mali in particular, it was really interesting. But you know, the countries that have the top 10 for the IDPs, like the internally displaced people, you know, Colombia is up there too, 7.2 million, and they just had an election with a super like kind of Trumpy kind of guy taking power, right? So it's like, what's going to happen there? But the DRC is really high, and you've got Ebola showing up in the northeast corner again.
And this again,
Syria is still in the top 5 with 5 million something, right? So,
but we have to also mention Myanmar, right? We had this internal conflict, and on top of it, earthquake, and now we have people constantly moving. It's like secondary tertiary displacement, right? So I actually wonder, because this is not really mentioned here, the methodology behind it. If somebody is displaced once versus if somebody is displaced twice, how do they count it? As two separate cases of displacement, or is it just one? That's interesting to me. I'm pretty sure they have some more detailed data, but this may confuse regular readers of those reports. The number of Ukrainian refugees is growing. It's not a big growth, but there are still Ukrainians who are leaving Ukraine and asking for asylum in different European countries. It's not only the top countries that are hosting them. This is also worth saying because the conflict is
the Ukrainians are also
over.
Technically kept out of this data because they have this like temporary protected status. They're not considered asylum seekers.
But this
They're
is
not
changing.
Considered. But in this data, in this report, the Ukrainians are like separate because they're not categorized in the same way. So when you do any type of a search for how many refugees are there, yes, they're considered refugees on like say a hosting scenario, like how many of them are in Poland or in Germany, which are very high, and they're kind of the only major European countries that are truly hosting a dramatic number of people compared to what everyone probably assumes. But they're not counted the same way as someone from sub-Saharan Africa or Southwestern Asia or like the Central Asia. Like they're just really seen separately.
That
right?
like
and they
seen
fit,
separately.
and they
that's one
fit
thing.
into a different category in terms of
Yeah.
like geographically where they're coming from. They're seen as European in terms of Europe, like continentally displaced versus globally displaced. So it's really interesting to see how they factor into the numbers.
The thing is that there's one thing about UNHCR data and whom they view as a refugee, right? And the second one is who gets the refugee or asylum seeker status in new hosting countries, and it's not always the same.
No.
And we can talk about, for example, Bangladesh hosting so many Rohingya, and they do not get the refugee status.
Yeah.
At least not the ones who came in the last few rounds.
But so like they may not get this status from the government of Bangladesh, which we talked about in a previous episode about Rohingya and their current reality 10 years later, right? So it's all of this is kind of like we're hitting the 10-year anniversary on all of this, right? It's kind of crazy. But like, you know, they're still up there. Bangladesh is still up there as like host nation that is hosting millions of people from other places. And it was really interesting to see the IDP numbers in Myanmar. Because that's about all the people who didn't get out.
Yeah.
And then you have all the refugees that are being hosted in Thailand, 600K. Like, I mean, like, there's a lot of people that are displaced that may not be considered refugees because of the countries didn't sign they're not signatories on something, or they just refuse to give that legal status to people. But the people are there. I don't think those people give a shit about what category they fit into. They're living in terrible conditions. They have real major struggles, and now the financial supports that are coming from international, sources are drying up, either because they're deliberately drying up because of political maneuvers, or because they're literally just money just isn't there. Like,
okay. Let's go to the top 10 hosting countries.
Well, I have my numbers here, so it would not be fair for us to play this game. I'm curious if you could tell me, like, name how many European countries you can name that are in the top 10.
Top 10?
Top 10 hosting refugees.
I know this specifically.
Okay.
Germany, because it's number 1,
True,
with 2.7 million. Then Poland is number 8, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
It's like the same as, I think, Ethiopia, with something like 1 million or 1,100,000.
They're the same number as Ethiopia, yeah.
And then the last one is France, 800,000. Yeah.
Yep.
3.
And any others?
3. European?
Yeah, European.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
But haven't you been paying attention to European news recently? Isn't it just like, you know, everything's about refugees? There's so many people. There's 75% of the country is not refugees. In Italy, and Belgium, and the Netherlands, and every country that's falling to the right.
So many refugees.
Oh my God,
right?
there's so many refugees, and that's why Hungary has problems, right? Come on, bullshit. All of this is bullshit. They just like inflate these chaotic numbers to make it seem like it's something.
Yeah.
And it works every time. It's unbelievable how easy it is for this to work, but they're nowhere there. Like, could you imagine if these European countries dealt with what Turkey deals with? Or Uganda, like Turkey, 2.4 million, Uganda, 1.8 million, Chad is 1.5 million, Bangladesh, 1.2 million, Pakistan, 1.2 million, Ethiopia, 1, Sudan, almost 1 million, and then, Sudan and France are tied right now, right?
More or less.
But this mindset of, it's an invasion, it's a tsunami, it's a wave, fuck off. Sorry.
But, it's not going to change. People don't look at data. It doesn't. It's not sexy. It's not interesting, right?
This is super interesting and I love to throw it at them. No, but I would love to just like mail them these numbers.
Of course, nobody's going to read
losers.
it. It does not evoke any specific emotions. It's raw data, and even though it's true and it should bring some logic, it does not. Nobody cares about it. The perception is the thing that changes. And Germany, some time ago, took over Turkey as number 1, right? And this changed predominantly with Russia's invasion on Ukraine.
Yeah.
The number of Ukrainian grew, right? Poland, almost like all the refugees that are in Poland are Ukrainians, right? So Poland is the top 10. 5 years ago, it was nowhere near the top 50, and the situation changed so much with just one crisis.
Yeah.
And you're right that like Ukrainians are not viewed that much as refugees or as individuals in need of support, especially UNHCR support, because most of them integrated into Western society so well, right? We have this data saying that 73% of Ukrainians work in Poland. That's a huge number.
That's massive.
Huge number. And just like thinking if they leave, what will happen to the economic growth in Poland, right? So they contribute to the economy, they pay taxes, their children go to school and so on.
But I forgot, you in a previous episode, you talked about the numbers in Germany, and it was like seen as like this broad success, but it was a pretty high number. It was like 60-something percent.
I would like to tell you, but I forgot.
But it was high.
It was high, but it was not as high as Poland.
But think about it from the perspective of cultural differences, in that like the majority, if not all of the people, the broad majority of Ukrainians that are in Poland and that are now working are women or young people who are both like they left with their moms or other female members of the family. And then so 73% of all of those people working is a great number, right? Because it really truly represents the broad majority of all the people. But when you take that same number and you compare it to, say, Germany, and you have families, and you have families that traditionally, culturally, the women do not leave the house to work, they just take care of the kids, those numbers are skewed because that 50 or 30 or 40% is really only representing half of the potential, so to speak, eligible workers. Because it's just the men who would go to work, not the women. So that number you could like take the women out of the equation and say, what's the percentage of men from other places that are non-Ukrainian working in Europe? And that number would be much higher.
Here's the problem with data, right? They do not take into consideration any details, any specificity of a nation, a group, community, individual situation, how many children people have, what are the other obstacles for them to work, right? You do not zoom in. You do not really understand what is happening there. And okay, data's law,
you can spin the
right?
data any way you like, and people will look at the same. It's like the Bible or something. You just find the same verse and then use it to your purpose. Like it's everyone's going to do that. There's always going to be political spin on things. Unfortunately, these types of things don't make the headlines. The headline becomes something sensational, and then you don't see the rest of it, right? Because because we're not going to dig deep enough, or people don't want to focus on those things, and they're just happy with the headline. But I think we have, for the last 5 years, been encouraging people to look a little deeper than the headline, because there's a really, really interesting information in here that's helps you see a bigger picture if you are bothering to look. And so these numbers are kind of amazing to me. But like I saw a bunch here. I have them on a separate sheet here. The people in the EU. Like again, we're talking about how intensely this issue of immigration and refugees and migration and all this stuff has destabilized all political realities in the continent, and all the local and all the specific countries, the local regions of those countries, the whole global bloc. It's really unbelievable how much it is changed the game. And when you look at the real numbers, it's such a small number of people. Okay, so if you have a headline that says 10 million refugees and migrants, asylum seekers in Europe, that number sounds big. But when you compare it to the entire broad population of all of those countries, it's quite small. And then when you think about how many people are now first-time asylum seekers, could you gander a guess of a number?
First-time
in 2025. First-time asylum seekers.
I don't know. I haven't seen this data. First-time asylum seekers in 2025. No.
I'll give you a hint.
Illuminate
It's
me.
less than 1 million.
My guess was less than 1 million.
It's just like it's 670,000 people. Okay, like
it's even closer.
Again,
to half a million.
it's a pretty small number when you think of the broad the actual population of the spaces that they're coming to. Then when you think of where are they coming from, could you guess the top three?
Countries,
the backgrounds, like the countries they're coming from, and they're seeking.
Like the new ones in 2025.
The new ones in 2025, seeking asylum in Europe. Okay. Where are they coming from?
Afghanistan.
Yes, they're still in the top three. They're second.
The new one. I don't think it's Ukrainians.
Nope.
I don't think it's Syrians anymore.
They're in the top three.
Yeah, so they're three. They're
three. So number one.
Whom am I missing in Europe? Because you're saying
no, they are in Europe seeking asylum. They're not from Europe. They are from another place, like Afghans or Syrians. There are 64,000 Afghans seeking asylum in 2025 in Europe. That's a pretty small number for the whole of Europe. So I'm sure we're going to talk about it in our next episode about like why would we normalize relations with the Taliban because of 64,000 applications for asylum?
About that.
Are you serious? Syrians, much lower,
It
40,000.
must be one of the African countries. No?
No.
No. Okay, you have to now illuminate me.
Well,
because
it's
people
in the
will get
news this
annoyed
week
by
because of
that.
another terrible thing that happened, but unrelated to migration. It may create and change all these numbers dramatically because of what just happened this week. It was in the news every day in January.
Okay, just say it. People will get annoyed.
They won the World Baseball Classic.
I don't remember.
Are you serious?
remember.
I don't know if we can be married
Was
anymore.
Haiti?
No. Haiti did not win the World Baseball Classic. I'm sorry. Venezuela?
Venezuela? Oh, sorry. But it's to Europe.
Yes, there are 90,000 Venezuelans seeking asylum in Europe right now.
Huh.
And that makes perfect sense as to why I met so many Venezuelans in different places recently, because
continent.
they all came seeking asylum as a result of everything that was going on. And so it's in 2025, they are the number one group.
Okay.
That's not what you read, and that's not what you read in the headlines. That's not what you see in AFD posts. That's not what you see in any of these other far right publications and broadcasts. They're not saying any of these things. Could you guess which countries are hosting them? Which countries are they coming to?
Okay, I would say Spanish-speaking countries.
Okay.
So Spain.
So Spain's in there. Yes.
Yes. Spain, I would say maybe France, because it's like closeness. And one more, Italy.
Yes.
Okay.
One more is the top four, and
Germany.
Yes, and those four countries represent 83% of the people coming, right? The other 17% are everyone else together, including our beloved Greece. Do you know how many people came to Greece claiming asylum in 2025?
Like less than 100.
Yes. 55.
Okay.
55,000. And last year, the numbers were 128. But if you watch Greek media, there's a tidal wave of people coming every day.
Yeah,
and that they need to throw away all the morality, and they throw away all the laws and throw away all the covenants and throw away everything.
But they're paying attention mostly to Afghans, people from Middle East and Africa. They do not. Venezuelans not so much.
It's not. These numbers are not all Venezuelans. I'm just saying these are numbers of all the people coming right now that have gotten in and claimed asylum in the calendar year of this report. So, again, it's about. The media is complicit in the way they spin this information, and no one's holding them accountable at all. So it's part of the problem, because it doesn't take much. Hopefully, people will watch this episode, and that will influence some extra research on their own, since everyone is all about doing their own research now.
It's such an important topic that the algorithm will spread it all over,
I hope
right?
So. Maybe we have to drop some more F-bombs, or we need to say some more crazy things to be at the front of that experience.
No. That drops it down. Okay. This big number, 129.4, that's all displaced people plus stateless people, right? When we zoom in to the just refugee and asylum seeking group. So asylum seekers, we have 9 million, and refugees, we have 64.2 in 2025. And the report puts a lot of attention to the situation of refugees and asylum seekers. And I was really trying to find something positive here. Okay, the number dropped, but we know that it's like a little bit of a fake drop. It's also because we have not mentioned that so many of those returns, right, those were almost forced returns, right? Several countries decided to stop the protection system for Afghans, for example. Pakistan, Iran, so many returned because of the conditions in the country, because of complete lack of support, or because when it comes to Pakistan, just pushing them out.
Iran did the same thing. So,
So so this is a situation. It's not that situation improved and now it's so fantastic to live under Taliban regime.
No,
it is not.
But
People
like even that situation alone, like the data for 2025, like what's happening in 2026, half of the year is gone. 300,000 more people have been forced back into Afghanistan from Pakistan, and like double that from Iran. Like it's really a nonstop purge of people, and so there's a whole another episode to talk about what's going on in Afghanistan right now and how they're being left completely on their own. And even if they got out and they had some safety, they're being stripped of that safety and being thrown back into uncertainty. Really, really terrible. But those numbers are a part of this, right? So all of those people being forcibly like stripped of their protections.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's part of it.
So
this decrease in numbers is not a good thing. It's actually a bad thing.
Looking at everything that UNHCR measures when it comes to refugees and asylum seekers, there's almost no good stat here. So the only thing I found that was positively going up was the number of refugees and asylum seekers who had legal documents in their host countries. But it's not a big one. I'm trying to find this number for you.
It was like,
it was small.
It
was basically few percent, right? Okay, hopefully it will be a trend and will go up.
But it was a positive number. It was like above, it was like, I think in the 60s or something.
Yes.
Like, but, you know, so yes, that's good that more people were having documentation in their spaces compared to the previous cycle.
But the other thing that is supposed to be positive was an increase in the number of refugees that have a right to decent work. I'm very curious how they define decent work, because at this moment
but that was another
80%.
positive number, 80%, right?
80%. So, okay, the right to decent work, having the right to it, like everybody in Greece who gets their document, they have a right to have a decent work. Do they have it? No. There are no stats that actually show where the refugees are in the poverty line, right? How much above or beyond or below they are.
But like the median salary here in Greece is like, you know, just over $1,000 a month after you take away all of the bills and everything. And so you're really not talking about a significant amount of money. And you could talk to anybody that's on crew with us or anyone who works in our community who has jobs, and they could tell you what a decent job looks like and what a decent job, what options they have for decent work. That's another episode on its own. But of those 80% that have access to decent right to work, if they have a job, only 46% of them have access to the banking system.
Yes, and this is a major problem, right, in many places. Okay, you can work in theory, but there are if you want to work legally, you need to have a bank account, because most like European countries will not pay you.
They're not going to pay you cash.
Right? So you need to have it.
But only half of them have the banking account.
And that's such a massive problem also in Europe. It's not only like when we imagine countries in Africa or Middle East. It is a problem in Europe. It's this vicious cycle, or in order to have a bank account, you need to have an address. In order to have an address, you have to have an ID. In order to have an ID, you need to have something else.
And you get trapped in this bureaucracy.
It's trapped in bureaucracy, and sometimes those things exclude themselves. Like, you know, you want a bank account, you need to show your address. You want an address, you need to show that you have a bank account to pay for it from your bank account.
You want an address, so you want an apartment, you need to show that you have employment. You want employment, you have to show that you live somewhere. Like, how do you do either of those things? It's like, it's just ridiculous.
Complicated, right?
Yeah. So then you have a ton of these people who may have 80%, maybe have the right to work, but they're actually not working quote unquote regular jobs or legal jobs or on the books jobs, because the system is not providing them the pathway to do that smoothly. And then out of that, the ripple effect of that is the 35%, the number, again, take that great number and then dig a little deeper and say, oh, only 35% of those people have access to adequate housing. Like that's affordable, that's like livable, that's habitable. So you got two data points that are below that 80% that are really, really scary.
Yes. And on top of it, the thing that made me reset is that the number of refugee and asylum-seeking kids, their enrollment in primary school dropped, and general enrollment in public education system is also dropped.
It went from 73 to 68% for youth, like for
primary,
small primary
for
age
primary.
school. It's like up to 12, right? And then the young refugees or the young people who are seeking asylum or something else, only 39% of them are in the education system.
So what is really sad for me in this data is the number of enrollments in education system. So kids, little kids and slightly older kids, those data dropped, those numbers dropped. And that's a very bad symptom for future, right? I hope this trend will not continue. And the numbers are not really gigantic, but still, when you think that there are individuals behind those numbers, individual kids, right? So the number of children enrolled in primary education, that's a drop from 71% to 66%. And the number of children and youth enrolled in general educational system, so not primary but general, that's a drop from 46 to 39, and 39 is really low when you think we're talking about kids and youth, right? So everybody who should be at school.
Yeah, so you're talking about everyone from 13 until 18, or maybe even like extended age education.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about this is you really also have to think like, we're automatically going to wrap our head around the idea that this is about Europe, and it's not about Europe. It's not about America. It's about the whole entire world. So these numbers are inflated based off of the systems that they do have access to things in, but then you add in all the spaces where education is almost, it doesn't matter whether it's a human right or not. It's like it's just not really provided for anyone. And yet, the three countries that show the most promise are not European. So
most promise in which area?
In these numbers rising that are helping this number go up, even though the overall numbers have gone down. Three specific countries are like bright spots. Could you guess what those bright spots are?
No, illuminate me. I have no idea.
Okay. One, we just did an episode about, and you referenced it, which was like really surprising to hear that it was Mali. Another one right now in the midst of, the potential for their country to be destabilized by what's going on in their region is Jordan. Okay. So how will these numbers change if suddenly a shit ton of people flee the West Bank and go into Jordan after all of the settler violence that's happening? And Algeria.
Oh, interesting.
So these three countries apparently are the ones that are making the most progress in ensuring that primary age education is increasing and that all general access to education is increasing. And you'd think it would be Germany, France, Italy, Greece.
But I think this
Poland.
is just increase because...
But they were just saying that these were the outliers, that they were like a bright spot of positivity. And so you said earlier you were looking for some positive moments and positive data points.
Because when I think about it, basically almost 100% of Ukrainian kids have access to education in Poland, Germany, France, wherever they are. They are either in the national system or they are studying in Ukraine online, right? Not in Ukraine, like online Ukrainian curricula.
So strip them away.
Yes.
And then what does that do to the data set?
Exactly. What does it do to the data? It drops significantly. So there are so many places in the world that have basically no education for kids on the national level. We know that kids still, even in the worst places, they try to find education and study, and their parents are actually trying to do this. In camps, there are some local schools, community schools, but that's not the same. It's not even close to what those kids should get. Basic ABC, basic counting, where's science, where's history, where's literature, right? There's nothing. So those kids have no chance of continuing their education in high school or higher education, right? Because that's not the level of education that would allow you to do that.
Yeah, but like you saw that commercial last night when we were watching the baseball highlights. They're all passing the AI tool like workflows, so they'll be good, no problems, right? No, it's like I would actually let's put a link to this report in the episode and let's challenge the open community to actually dig in here and find positive numbers. Find something that makes you excited about or hopeful about what's coming in the next year cycle, or a trend that seems like it's positive, because the trend that I see is pretty low and it's pretty bad. And so you referenced something earlier about access. It's not just the education, but it's also another like nice number was that 81% of the people have access to healthcare. But then when you dive one layer deep, you can see that only 19% of them have like full integration into the social safety net and social well-being environments of those host countries. So only 19% are really following the rules of their own system. They've integrated all those people in like they've done with Ukrainians in Poland or in Germany. So only 19%. So 81% have access to healthcare, but what do they have access to when 81% of them are not being provided the same amount of engagement that everyone else that's living on the same block as them perhaps can get simply by being born in that country. So again, one layer deep and the numbers are pretty sad and pretty devastating for people.
I remember just a week ago, I was moderating a panel discussion with Standing the Gap Coalition. Highly recommend. We'll put links to some shorts from this. And I remember what Sally from Cribs International said. They are helping pregnant women, predominantly those who became homeless. And she said that, yes, access to education is one thing. Whether you get it and how you're treated in hospitals, that's a completely different thing. And what a difference it makes to have a white European person with you. It was so sad because she is dealing only with pregnant women, you know, so those are people like, you see that there's something wrong with her. You have to give this woman a priority, right? You do not imagine other scenarios. And some of them are being sent away. Like nobody's talking to them even, you know. It's just something really, really disturbing to me.
Yeah, she had a lot of really powerful things to say about her experiences.
Absolutely.
It was a great listen. You did a great job moderating, by the way.
Thank you. I'm wondering, how do you interpret this data? 76% of refugees and asylum seekers had freedom of movement in 2025. A lot or not? 76% freedom of movement.
Okay, so I want context to that. Does that mean, like, what does that include? Does that include, like, Kakuma camp, like we had the episode with Empower Van with Claude? Because maybe they're allowed to move freely in and out of a giant
They are.
city.
They just don't have anywhere else to go.
Right. So, okay, do you have, you know, in Greece you have the CCACs, these closed centers that you technically can leave during the day. But if that center is, you know, an hour and a half to 2 hours away from an epicenter of like opportunity for education or employment, what are you? Yes, you can leave during the day, but are you going to?
But no, Greece doesn't have a full 100% right to free movement. People who arrive to the islands are in the border procedure. They are not allowed to move out of the island until they get permission.
Yes,
again,
but you know they'll be,
can be different.
But they're
going to
be presented. But they'll be presented as, you know, oh, you can come and go out of the camp every day. But then if you're not back at 8 o'clock, you're in trouble, right?
Yeah.
So that's not freedom of movement, but that's the way they're going to spin it. And then again, if you have freedom of movement because there are no security lines, there's no security, the other side of it, and you're in these spaces that are mega cities, like a Kutupalong in Bangladesh, like, yes, you can't leave their security on the true buffer of the whole entire camp, but the camp is massive. It takes you hours to cross the thing. So yeah, you can move around freely in a city that was made out of nothing or whatever resources are available. They destroyed the entire ecosystem just to build houses. That's not freedom of movement. Freedom of movement means that you have the right to physically go where you want to be, to work, to live, to study, to do other things. And so that number is misleading to me.
Okay. We've been talking for a long time, and Humanitarian Watch is supposed to be a short version of Fractured. We
didn't even talk about the finances and how devastating this is.
I know, and we have to talk about this. But before we do that, since we're going through different groups of displacement, something about stateless people. Because this
I have some data for that too.
Yes, it's
really
a little bit difficult because whatever data you put on stateless people, it's for sure not fully accurate, right? It's very hard to register all stateless people. There was a slightly increase in the number of stateless people. Yes, by 3%, right? From 2024 to 2025. But it's still not a gigantic number. It's 4.4 million to 4.5 million. Now, there are some countries that are traditional, I don't want to say hosts of stateless people. They just simply have more stateless people. You have this?
I do, yeah. So like the top four were, I think, based off the episodes we've had previously, Bangladesh is the number one with 1.2 million. It's all the Rohingya. Thailand is third with 611,000. But
and there are
that's
some positive
also
changes in Thailand.
But that's still also predominantly ethnic minorities from Myanmar or Rohingya in particular. And then Myanmar itself has 520,000 stateless people inside the borders, which did not get out. So they're more Rohingya right there. So you're talking, over 2 million, 2.5 million people right there in this one area.
Yeah.
And then the one that kind of jumped out at me was interesting, almost a million, just under a million in Ivory Coast. So in West Africa, you have a lot of destabilization from the Sahel. So you have a lot of people that are moving around, and apparently right now 1 million or so people are stateless inside one country there. But the more interesting thing was that, we talk a lot, and it's a big anniversary year for the UNHCR, for the signatories of the 1951 Convention on Human Rights. But 10 years later, they added one about reducing statelessness. And in that convention, only 34% of all of the signatories, 148 countries, are fully in compliance. Yeah. So that's 66% of the countries that signed on to this are not really doing what they're supposed to, and they're split in half. So half are not doing it at all, and half are approaching or partially approaching their duties and obligations. So only 34% are doing what they're signed on to do. So at some point or another, all of these covenants and all these declarations and all these things that we signed on to, they feel like from another planet. They feel like literally from a history books of like 150 years ago or something, but it's kind of within our parents' lifetime. It's almost within our lifetimes that this shit was signed. Yeah. And it's like, come on. Like, how is that not being honored? And this is a simple one. You could just give these people some documentation. Like, this is not hard. This one's not that hard to solve.
Yeah, I know.
But they're not solving it.
Yeah.
And sorry, the crazy number, only 58% of those people have the right to work. Yeah. So what the fuck do you do if you are stateless in a country, don't have protections, and you can't work? What do you do? Okay, so right from the front of the report, it was super interesting to dive into their finances, and they capped it with their finances as well.
Terrifying.
But it's really fucking scary. Really scary.
They usually run on a minus budget.
But this was crazy.
But this is crazy, and we know who to blame for this. Okay, shall I say it?
Soros, yes?
Of course, he's always blamed for everything, right? Okay. The funds they managed to fundraise for 2025, that's $3,932,000,000.
They used all of it already. Of course.
They used the whole thing. And the funding gap, so something that they were hoping to get, the funding gap is 64%. They didn't even manage to get half of it. And this is because...
Soros. No, I mean, like, USAID cuts, it wasn't just USAID cuts, because everybody started copying that. So you've seen the aid go down from Germany, from France, from the UK. Everyone is basically taking the lead and being like, oh, well, we could also cut that too. But in some respects, that's also being cut because they need to increase their military spending. So it's all kind of tied together. So you see all this conflict and all this chaos and all this like wavering about whether NATO will actually be fully supported by U.S. And now all of these countries are being forced to increase their military spending, or their just general need to have military spending. And where are they taking the money from? Yep. Well, they're taking it from the spaces that are going to lead to more conflict, more destabilization, that could potentially lead to them having bigger immigration problems. And so it's a really short-sighted decision, but all of these cuts are dramatic.
There is this graph on
it's really terrifying.
When they show different donors, the largest donors like European Union, the private donors, some institutions, and then there's US, which goes like this 3 years, and then it's like that.
It's a nosedive.
It goes nosedive, exactly. Gigantic.
It was a 64% cut from 1 year to the next.
From a bit more than 2 billion to 1.1 billion. So here you have like billion. We're talking about billion, and US was always the largest, the most generous donor to in general, humanitarian aid. Now, European Union is higher at 1 point. Sorry, I said it wrong. It's 2 billion, a little bit more than 2 billion in 2024 to 812 million.
Yeah.
So that's just
it's
gigantic.
a 64% cut. So then you have the EU member states, EU and the member states themselves individually make up the biggest donors now at 1.2 million.
Yeah, but it's still
lower.
It's still going down. It's going slightly down, like from what it was in like 2022, for example.
The numbers that I thought were really interesting here was you have the big spike was in 2022, and it was from general private donors, like just the regular private sector. You had this gigantic, like mountain because of Ukraine. And now over the course of the last 4 years, that has dropped in half.
Yep.
So it's sort of like, oh, well, the Ukrainians don't need the support anymore, so we don't have to give anymore. But there really is there's an elephant in the room. I mean, they really don't seem to give a shit about people from other places. And when you'll see a little mini spikes when there's humanitarian crisis, like an earthquake or a tsunami or something like this. You'll always see a pump up on support that happens. Yeah. But if it's something about like stabilization of a region or an area, they don't really seem to care unless it is a white victim.
People looking
just
like
say
them.
it straight up.
Yes,
it's really
absolutely.
fucked up. These numbers. And so the UNHCR, really, what are they supposed to do? They sold $135 million worth of their assets to try to close this 63% gap. That's not going to get it done. They cut their staff in half.
Well, this was massive.
Holy shit.
Massive around the world.
They cut it in half globally.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No, who's doing the work?
What's going to happen as a result of that cut? Like, how many people are going to die? I mean, can we create some sort of a tally about how many people have died as a result of these types of decisions? Is there a way for someone hold those people accountable for those deaths? Jesus Christ.
Okay.
I guess you don't want to end on a positive note.
Do you have any other positive note? Except for those like tiny things we really were trying intensively to find?
No.
So here you have the global
I know that there's more in here, and if you dive in, I think one of the more interesting things to do is to dive into the data portal, and you can go into the maps, and you can really customize your searches. And we did this last year on our World Refugee Day episodes. We did several of them on the Disinfo Watch, the Humanitarian Watch, and we talked about. We did some games, and we interviewed people on the street about like what do they think is the truth about how many refugees in Athens or in Europe and stuff like this. And everyone was wrong, like wrong, all across the board. It was like really shocking. But it was a lot of fun to like dive into the data.
In Greece? 5 million.
Yeah, half the country is a refugee. No, 122,000. So it was a really interesting experiment to do with people. Yeah. But it's always interesting to dive into those maps, and you can customize it, and we'll put a link for that in the show notes so that you can. And again, I challenge all of you to cherry pick some positive data from this report. But I really feel like the one positive. The one positive note here is to show the positive impact that U.S. aid had on the world, and the fact that you can't see it until something is taken away. And so it's sort of like, like that alone hopefully wakes everybody up to how important that was and how necessary it is. And if you want stability in the world, it needs to be, you need to engage here. And so we're going to give $300 million to all sorts of problems in the world, and we're going to create these funds for all of this like stabilization after we've created destabilization in Iran, and 300 outrageous amounts of money are going to go into all these spaces, probably for non-compete bids and shit. But that same amount of money could save lives across the globe, and it was. It was saving lives. It was keeping people safer. It was keeping people healthy. It was keeping people in education, not dying of HIV, not dying of completely curable diseases. And at some point or another, we need to look at this window of time as a reminder of what happens when we don't do that.
It kept people healthier, safer, had maybe slightly more access to education. It was never good. It was never giving them full access.
But it was necessary, and it had consistently been happening, and it needed to be increased, not decreased in half.
the system was built and we were sort of slowly progressing, and now it's done.
Well, everyone needs to wake up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we have
Okay.
the children of men.
Okay, here you have Global Report 2025 of UNHCR and why the drop in number of displaced people is not a reason to celebrate. Thank you very much, and see you in 2 weeks' time for our last episode of the season.